Today in the crypto space, we see the market taking a bit of a dip to the downside, Bitcoin bringing down the market, and of course, Ethereum taking a bigger hit, down approximately 5.5%. The rest of the crypto space, the altcoins are deep in the red, a lot of retracements throughout the market. However, guys, this is when the magic happens. This is when the convictions get put to a test, and this is where you need to start thinking about an offensive strategy to be buying those dips. In today's video, I want to talk about the general market. I want to use Bitcoin as a leading indicator, but of course, guys, I want to focus on Bitcoin today. There's a lot of fear and there's a lot of uncertainty and doubt within the market because Bitcoin is dragging everything down. So you know what? Let's talk about the news. Let's analyze the charts and let's strategize to capitalize. Welcome to the channel. My name is Mike and let's get right into it, guys. If you're new to the channel, welcome on the channel. We talk about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the altcoins, looking for opportunities. Whether we go up or down, bearish or bullish, it doesn't matter. All we want to do is stay one step ahead of this market so that we can capitalize on any of the volatility. And if you appreciate the strategy, subscribe to the channel, click that bell so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, including the live streams at 7:30 Eastern where we talk about crypto news and price action. Guys, if you have any projects you want me to cover here on the channel, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. You can hit me up on the socials. The links are in the description. Better yet, guys, join the Discord. The Discord is where it's at. Lots of good alpha, trade setup fundamentals, and learning material. All right, guys, let's get into it. What's going on here? Bitcoin coming down, obviously bringing down the market, inducing a bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt throughout the market. And this is where real capitulation could happen here. This is where things could happen, even if it's on the shorter term time frames. You know, we could definitely see Bitcoin hitting to those oversold conditions on the daily. And for me, that would be the opportunity to start taking a bit of risk, right? Obviously, there's risk no matter where you buy and how you buy. If you think you're buying tops, if you think you're buying bottoms, there's always risk when you start deploying capital. However, guys, we try to mitigate that risk by buying bottom ranges, by looking for oversold conditions, by looking for conditions where the bears start to show weakness. And as the current moment shows, we are not showing any weakness here as far as this bearish continuation to the downside. At the current moment, we could expect maybe a bullish pop based on the lower time frames, but the daily still trekking to the downside. Guys, we'll take a look at Bitcoin chart very soon, but before we do that, I want to look at the overall market first to get a sense of what is happening here and overall give us an idea of whether we should start scaling into some of these altcoins. Solana's coming down and we see a lot of these altcoins coming down. The larger cap altcoins, Cardano 4%, AVAX 7-8%, and you can see the list goes on. We're down approximately, I would say, a 5% on these top 100s, more or less 5% throughout the board. We have optimism coming down 4%, but if you look at the structure of the price action currently, you know, some are making double bottoms, some are making higher lows, some are making lower lows. The reality is this mixed bag of bearishness still suggests more bearishness. That's all it is. We got to be very patient here, because if you start scaling in too early, it's like you're trying to catch a falling knife. And this is why I want to focus on Bitcoin, because as long as Bitcoin keeps on falling lower, the rest of the market, including Ethereum, are definitely going to keep on falling. In tonight's live stream, we'll take a look at Bitcoin, we'll take a look at Ethereum, and we'll compare both heavyweights, and we'll look at the Bitcoin dominance to see exactly which side is dominating. Is Bitcoin dominating or is altcoin dominating? And depending on what we see there, it could give us an idea of what to expect in the up and coming days. Ultimately, I know here on the channel we've been focusing on altcoins significantly, of course, because those are where you can make some real good life-changing gains. However, we also emphasized significantly to always look for bottom levels, never buy tops. And today's the day where you can actually see that strategy plays out perfectly, because usually when you buy the tops, the way down is much higher, right? You fall a lot harder. But if you're already buying the bottom at support, the likelihood is that you're going to hold a lot better. And you can see a lot of the altcoins are falling. They're making lower lows. A lot of them are just falling. Look at Near Protocol right now is down just today 9% approximately, but in the last 7 days down approximately 19%. Guys, this is an opportunity. Apto's coming down, and we have more more lists. If you look at the last 7 days, you have a few of them that are down almost 20%. Arbitrum coming down, and a lot of the bullish projects. BitTensor are still going sideways. Very good sign of strength here. It's basically interrupting its bullishness that it has had in the last little while. Guys, we got into a bit of a long on Bitcoin on BitTensor in the last while, but I've been scaling out of this position because of what's happening right now. I feel like ultimately, if Bitcoin continues, Tau will continue coming down. Tau will eventually lose its strength, holding and propping up this price as it is right now, and eventually roll over. So be careful right now. If you're really into a bullish stance, you got to get into lower time frames. At best, for the 4 hour, the 1 hour. Looking at the daily right now on all these projects, it's starting to look very bearish. Say coming down 20% in the last 7 days, guys. I'm glad that we were in exit liquidity here. I expressed my concern about entering Say, Sui, and many others that have been running in the last little while. Being careful here was exactly what needed to be done, because you can see right now in the last 7 days, I would say even less, but nonetheless, in the last 7 days, guys, we've been coming down significantly here on Say, and you have an opportunity to buy dips at lower levels. We do have a few projects that are holding pretty good, but look at Sui, another 20%. Yes, it's getting a bit of relief to the upside in the last little while, but it's still coming down, guys. Lower lows, lower highs. The trend is your friend. I'm expecting further continuation to the downside. Now, of course, each individual chart will be different. I'm not sure if Sui is already oversold on the 4 hour or even on the daily. It could be on the 4 hour. But of course, we'll take a look at this in more detail if need be tonight at 7:30 on the live stream. So feel free to join and make any requests that you may have for any project that you may be interested in. I'll definitely pull up some charts and put them in top priority. But at the current moment, we can see that the general market is giving us a bit of a fire sale. And if you couple it up with the last previous days, some of them are down 20%. And you can see that. Again, Tezos, if you're interested, down 20%. We have what else do we have? 10%, 9%. Scicoin is doing really good. It's defying gravity, definitely up 28%. But even today, given the fact of bearishness, it's still kind of going stagnant. It's still only down. It's only up 3%. It's interrupting its bullish momentum, unfortunately. If it wasn't for this bearishness that we were having today, Scicoin could probably keep on going up and up and up, and with a lot more conviction and strength. So that's the thing here, guys. Sometimes bullishness gets interrupted by bearish momentum from Bitcoin, and Bitcoin generally has a lot of power, and it can sway the market in the opposite direction. And generally speaking, here we can see that the market is down approximately 5% today overall. Of course, if you go on the second page, you're going to see further dips, stronger dips, of course, because the market cap is lower. But ultimately, in the last week, you can see some of them down approximately 20%. Look at Bonk, 23%. These are great opportunities, guys, of course, and we'll take a look at these opportunities tonight at 7:30 Eastern. But for today, let's begin looking at Bitcoin. I know you're here to talk about charts, so let's start looking at Bitcoin. And of course, we'll do a full analysis here on Bitcoin, because ultimately Bitcoin, at the end of the day, for me, is looking a bit weak right here. This is where I thought Bitcoin would start losing its weakness and its strength, and guess what? It got a massive amount of weakness in this last little while. And I know it doesn't look like a lot, but it's critical, because the levels that are being broken at the current moment might be the beginning of a potential change of character, right? We're making higher highs and higher lows up until now, but all of a sudden we start breaking, critical levels of support, potentially support of this consolidation. And if we make a nice little bounce here, a dead cat bounce, a bit of relief, that's a lower high, guys, that's the beginning of a potential change of structure. Let's begin and look at this in a little bit more detail. So on the daily, the momentum is what's keeping me very, very reluctant. I'm not making any major moves here on Bitcoin. In fact, I'm not making any major moves here on the market. I was very defensive on the market in the last prior weeks. I've been always saying, trail up the stop loss, take a bit of profit, get defensive, defend those gains, because ultimately, if you're in profits, you want to defend those profits, right? You want to walk away profitable. So, and I started saying that exactly when we started seeing this bearish divergence. Bitcoin started reaching, horizontal resistance. We got the ETF news, and I didn't expect much of it. And of course, I expected a lot of the market to be completely desensitized by that ETF, because one day it was going to happen, the next day it wasn't, and back and forth, and that whole scenario got me totally desensitized. And you can see that the market already factored it in. It was already priced in, and all of a sudden we see Bitcoin come down. to the point that some of the people involved in the ETF are selling off, right? So this is the reality. Bitcoin is in a new league of manipulation, and we got to be prepared for that, right? So we can see that ultimately we are falling, and the horizontal support that I'm looking at is, of course, the volume gap. We're falling through the volume gap as we speak. Now, we could get a bit of support right now. Obviously, it's still at the top of the volume gap, and it kind of fell into it. It's likelihood that we continue coming down to the bottom, which is at about 38K, 38.2. So $38,200 more or less at the previous tops right here of price action. And that would be fine of a dip. Now, if at any moment, maybe here where we are right now, because we could bounce right back up, close this candle above the top of the volume gap and still make that little bounce if it happens, and it's going to happen based on the 4-hour, not here on the daily. But nonetheless, if we look at the daily and we just focus here on the daily momentum is still trekking to the downside. Look at this RSI. Okay, I want to totally exclude this for a second. We'll put it down here because that belongs to the 4-hour. Should I I'm a bit of a mess, I know, but you can see that ultimately this thing's coming down. Now, what we can also expect is a mean reversion based on the 4-hour. And what I mean by that is you can see that the purple and the yellow are almost too far away. They're not too far away, but a little bit. Look at the last time this happened. Impulsive move down, sideways consolidation, yellow gets to catch up. I think we're at that point where that kind of needs to happen. Impulsive move down, quick bounce to the upside to catch up and type of thing. Then when it ran up again, it consolidated to wait for the yellow. What I'm trying to say here is when the purple moves too quick, the yellow needs to catch up, and then there's a strategy here. Either the purple needs to go sideways or the yellow or the purple bounces and gets right back up here. So either way, I'm expecting something to happen, either consolidation in Bitcoin's price here where it is, where we could potentially make a bear flag for a continuation to the downside, causing momentum to go sideways, or we could get a dead cat bounce where we get a little bit of relief to the upside, and then a continuation down where we see the continuation of momentum to get to oversold conditions below the 30% mark. So what I'm actually saying here is this could happen, allowing the yellow to catch up, or we could see a bit of a bounce here and allow the yellow to kind of cross over, do its thing, and then finally continue to the downside and, you know, finally get oversold. Once we get oversold, this is where I get excited, guys, especially here on the daily. Okay, so we'll keep all this in mind that right now you can see that the trend and momentum is downwards, regardless if we get a bit of relief in the short term. Okay, so maybe even a little bit of a bounce here could happen, but again, not on the daily. Let's look at the MACD. The MACD is still looking bearish. EMAs are facing down. I know it's hard to see them, but they're still facing down, open and facing down with red histogram bars here, and we're entering that bearish control zone at the bottom half of the chart here, which means that the bearish trend is in strength right now. Okay, it is trending to the downside. So what we really have to understand is that it's very likely here on the daily, despite any noise that we get intraday, we are going to continue to the downside. We could get a bit of support here, like I said, a bit of a bounce, but until we get oversold here on the daily, which could take a couple of days or a few days, maybe the rest of the week, guys, I'm not getting into any fresh longs on anything here on the market. If anything, I might be looking for shorts, right? Because ultimately we can get a bit of relief to the upside, we can see a little bit of a bounce market wide, and then get a confirmation high, a lower high, where we start building that change of structure. We get that lower high, then we come down for a lower low. We start making, instead of higher highs, we're starting to make lower lows and lower highs. Guys, that's a pivot point right here, and it's very likely that happens. Now, we could be coming down for a bit of a dip, come back up, and we could get tons of manipulation, guys, because like I said, we're in a different arena nowadays with Bitcoin. There's a different caliber of trader with deeper pockets than ever expected, right? So we have to understand that, and well connected as well. So this is a new era for Bitcoin, and for a lot of Bitcoin traders, it could be a little bit different, the way we see things, the way we experience the charts and the markets. So we also have to understand that. But ultimately, the daily looks like it's coming down. Okay, let's look at the 4-hour quick, and then ultimately at the end, we'll take a look at the weekly to get a big picture, because I know my charts get a bit messy here, but you can see that we're already oversold. It's already oversold on the 4-hour. Now, am I going to take a chance here? Obviously, it's like catching a falling knife. It is only oversold. Now, we broke through the horizontal support, the tops. We had these bottoms, but the top of the volume gap got broken. It broke right through, and it looks like it wants to come right through the volume gap. You can see there's an empty space here to allow the price to fall a little bit more, and we could hang out here in oversold conditions on the RSI for a good little while, kind of bounce around here while the price gets to that level, and we can see that the MACD is pretty much confirming that we're not done with the bearishness. We got red histogram bars to the downside, and the EMAs got their cross again and in the bearish control zone. So I'm not really convinced here. Regardless of this bullish divergence, I'm not willing to take any chances at the current moment. Risk is public enemy number one, and when you feel that there's potential risk, you don't have to trade every trade. I'd rather get into a scenario, a trade that has a high probability of a win, so that I can ultimately have a great win ratio. I want a healthy win to loss ratio where I'm winning more than I'm losing, and the only way to do that is be very picky and selective of the setups that you trade. And right now I'm not really convinced, right? We could come down a little bit more, we could get a bounce, we could go sideways, we could do so many things, but ultimately what I am looking at is that daily. In the back of my mind, if I go long here, I'm going against the daily trend, which for me sounds a bit illogical. I rather understand that the daily is pushing down, and if I get a bit of relief to the upside on the 4 hour, I rather short it because I know I'm going with the trend on the daily. Okay, so that's my take here. We're oversold again. The volume's contracting just a little bit here. We have a volume gap right here and a volume gap down here, which might look better on the weekly. So let's jump right into the weekly for a second, and we'll kind of look at what's happening here. You can see that my charts are pretty involved. I get it. Now I also noticed that I really don't need this anymore, this upper bounds level. Now I could have left it for a second and just kind of move this around a little bit. Now this could have been the top, a nice little top. This could have been even a nice broadening wedge that we're seeing here, an expanding wedge, a megaphone pattern, whatever you want to call it, doesn't really matter. And ultimately, if you do look at it like this type of pattern technically should break down bearish, because it's very difficult to keep up this type of momentum eventually. What's very likely is that we kind of form a double top here. It's very likely that we see double tops at the end of the megaphone pattern. It's so hard to keep up this momentum. If you think about it, if we extend this a little bit further, we would have to come down, and then the next leg would have to be even more exponentially bigger, and it's very difficult for price action to do that time after time after time without a nice retracement. So what I'm really looking for ultimately is a retracement. That's why I wanted to kind of remove this, but let's leave it there for now. If we do come down, I am looking for an eventual support level at about, I would say 38. That would be a very good 38,200. However, you can see that the weekly is also rolling over a little bit. It's not looking the greatest. You got to admit, we got the EMAs looking for that cross as we speak on the weekly. Now, if this gets an EMA cross, we get one little red histogram bar. I'm not saying that it's going to come all the way down to the bearish control zone, but I could say, you know what, a bit of a retracement where we see one of these and then a continuation up is very, very possible. And we could even come up, and if you notice the trend here on the histogram bars, they're getting smaller over time, right? So we could come down and just potentially make a small one, and this would be a healthy thing along the way. This is totally normal. Why? Because Bitcoin is up it was up over 200% from its bottom, guys. A retracement is due. It is definitely due, and it's healthy for the markets. Okay, so again, first stop right around here. We could get a reaction, some sort of bounce, so that we come back up, either even make a higher high, which I kind of doubt, because this wick right here looks a little bit blow off topish, or a double top, which we exclude the wicks and we look at the bodies, a double top just on the bodies, or a lower high, which would be a confirmation high, to suggest that, you know what, we're definitely rolling over here, and we might get that follow through here on the MACD and start getting a bit of a corrective move. Okay, so I'm going to clean this up a little bit. I'm messy enough. Okay, so if you look at the RSI as well, it's kind of emptying off here. It's coming down to lower levels. Now we could get a bit of a bounce again, a bit of relief, like I said, to the upside, and then as a confirmation high, and then confirm this as a bit of a dip here. Now there's no signs of bearish divergence here on the weekly, and sometimes it doesn't have to happen, but if it were to happen, I'm expecting a higher high. Okay, that's what I'm expecting for Bitcoin. If we are going to get a class A bearish divergence, the only way to do that here on the weekly is to actually make a higher high on the price action, lower highs on the RSI, and that's a class A bearish divergence. We can make a double top and get a class B bearish divergence, and that's also very possible. And for me, that's interesting as well. Okay, if we do get a double top and we see something like that, excluding the wicks, and the momentum makes a lower high, that's a class B bearish divergence, where we start looking for lower levels, guys. So that's where the M patterns start to play in. The cup and inverse cup and handles, that's where they start to come in. The head and shoulder formations, you got to keep an eye on those, because ultimately what we're looking for is sign of weakness and eventually the breaking of some structure to the downside, making it a lower low. The change of structure is going to come, but I believe that it's going to be shown mostly on the daily. The weekly is a large time frame. It's going to take too long, in my opinion, to actually see that play out. It's the daily. It's all about the daily in the current moment for me. And based on that, again, the $38,000 Bitcoin is possible, but at worst case scenario, I'm looking at about 33, 32. Okay, let's talk about that for a second, because you can see, as I zoom out, you can see we have some nice tops right here, double top right here, and we have a nice empty spot with the beginning of some supply and demand here that could act as support. So at worst case scenario, we break a bit of a trend here. We could touch this trend, we break below the trend, fake a couple of people out, hunt liquidity at these levels, because I think that a lot of people are going to be trading long positions upon this trend line and expecting it to respect. And of course, the market manipulation may kick in and get those people wrecked and maybe come all the way down here as a, you know, long squeeze. Maybe we do come down a little bit lower and hit that 30k 31k right here. If you notice, there's a bit of a gap of emptiness, of weakness that is perfectly aligned with these tops right here, and I wouldn't mind to see that happen, because again, we'll be buying the dips. And of course, we got to look at the absolute bearish scenario, which would be testing back this amazing breakout. If you look at this breakout, shoulder, head, shoulder, and we a bullish divergence, nice follow through price action, confirmation low, everything was set up here perfectly. This is why I'm saying I'm not too crazy about buying the dips on Bitcoin, because I bought down here. These were my entries. Now for me, ultimately it doesn't matter. Coming down to about here is great. Buy the dip. If it does come down here, if you're on the sidelines, of course, buy the dip. This is the beginning of the majority of the price action where market participants had a lot of conviction. They took risk down here. And these are the people that usually are the ones that get rewarded, the people that take the risk at the right time. Now, the hunting of liquidity could still happen right here. There's people that waited perfectly for the absolute moment for the back test. Every single confirmation. We broke the neckline of the inverse head and shoulders. We back tested the breakout level twice for confirmation and then got the spring. Everybody that didn't take risk down here got into this level with all these confirmations. Now, the people that didn't take any risk, usually those are the people that get tested. And if it does come down here, expect that the majority of the population that got in here, you know, are going to get tested, and they might get already put their stop losses at break even. And if they put their at break even, expect their positions to be, you know, basically hit and their positions to be lost. We will be able to buy in to Bitcoin at this level. So I'm going to be preparing a bit of capital reserved at about 25k 800 just in case, right around this level, if we get oversold on the daily and come down to this level and we're at 33, I'll buy a little bit, but not Bitcoin. I'm going to be looking at altcoins, guys, because altcoins will come down significantly harder than Bitcoin, and that would be the opportunity of the bull run, is to get into those positions on altcoins on the cheap. And I understand that Bitcoin could run. I understand that Bitcoin will outperform altcoins if that does happen on the bounce. But we also have to understand that if you get into the right altcoins, they will keep up with Bitcoin and may even outperform Bitcoin. Think about what happened right here. Look at Caspa, Taraxa, multi-chain, multiverse, Space. The actual name is actually slipping my mind, but you get what I mean. A lot of them, Tau running up with this whole move to the upside. We had Render running up. We had Nakamoto Games running up, and a lot of the tokens, a lot of the projects that we covered here on the channel kept up with Bitcoin, and in fact outperformed Bitcoin with this run. So the theory of putting your capital only in Bitcoin because Bitcoin's going to lead the market doesn't always stand true. You just got to make sure that you do really, really good research on the altcoins that you cover, that you get into, because that way you can ensure with some degree of probability that they will keep up with Bitcoin's bullishness, right? That's what we really want to do. So let's wait for the daily to get oversold, number one, and then we'll start looking for horizontal support. If we see that the weekly's going to start rolling over here, guys, I'm expecting a further dip, and that's when the weekly could take us down to about 25k, and that would be a deep retracement. So I'll be reserving a chunk of capital for about 33 to 31 if that were to happen right around here. And at worst case scenario, guys, you can't negate the possibility that we do come down to about 25k, guys. Just be prepared, because that's the level to induce some really max pain into the market before we get that bull run. Guys, if I've offered you any value here on the channel, do the channel a massive favor, slap the like button. It does really help out with the algorithm. And of course, if you want to join me live tonight at 7:30 Eastern, that is a great time and place to make those requests on all the projects that you're interested in. That way we can come up with a plan and a strategy going forward for this up and coming bull run. Guys, if you want to follow me on the socials, the links are in the description below. Feel free to join that Discord, guys. The Discord's where it's at. Lots of good alpha, trade setup, fundamentals, and learning material. Take care, guys. Have a good one, and don't forget, buy the dip.